The morning sun cast long shadows across the busy downtown street as Maya Rodriguez hurried toward the courthouse steps. Her weathered black backpack bounced against her hip with each quick step, containing everything that mattered to her legal case. Documents that had taken months to gather, photocopies of receipts, witness statements, and the original contract that would prove her former employer had wrongfully terminated her. Maya had been fighting this battle for 8 months now. After working as a cleaning supervisor at Meridian Office Complex for 3 years, she had been fired without warning or proper cause. The official reason given was budget cuts, but Maya knew the truth. She had reported safety violations and wage theft to the building management, and within 2 weeks, she found herself unemployed. The timing was not coincidental. At 42 years old, Maya was no stranger to hardship. She had raised 2 children as a single mother, working multiple jobs to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Her daughter Carmen was now in her 2nd year of college, studying nursing, while her son Miguel had just graduated high school and was working at a local auto shop. Both had offered to help with legal expenses, but Maya refused to burden them with her problems. The backpack she carried today contained more than just paperwork. It held her hopes for justice, for vindication, and for the settlement money that would help her get back on her feet. Without steady income for months, she had been forced to take on sporadic cleaning jobs that barely covered rent and utilities. Her savings were depleted, and creditors were calling daily. As Maya approached the courthouse, she noticed the unusual amount of activity on the street. Police cars were parked along the curb, and officers in tactical gear stood at various positions. She had heard on the radio that morning about some kind of protest planned for today, something about housing rights and evictions, but she had been too focused on her own case to pay much attention. The courthouse steps were crowded with people holding signs and chanting slogans. Maya tried to navigate through the crowd, clutching her backpack tightly. She needed to meet with her lawyer, David Chun, in 15 minutes. David had taken her case on contingency, believing strongly in her cause, but Maya knew that if they lost today, she would be responsible for court costs that she simply could not afford. Excuse me, Maya said politely as she tried to push through the gathering crowd. The protesters were peaceful but passionate, their voices growing louder as more people joined the demonstration. Signs reading, "Housing is a human right," and "Stop illegal evictions," waved above the sea of heads. Maya was making progress through the crowd when she felt a sudden, violent tug at her shoulder. Before she could react, someone had grabbed her backpack and was pulling it away from her. The force of the pull knocked her off balance, and she stumbled forward, her hand instinctively gripping the strap. "Hey," she shouted, trying to maintain her hold on the bag. "That's mine." The person pulling at her backpack was a young man in his 20s, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. His face was partially obscured by the hood, but Maya could see determination in his eyes. He was not just grabbing randomly. He seemed to know exactly what he was after. "Let go," the young man hissed, pulling harder. "You don't understand what you're carrying." Maya's mind raced. What could he possibly mean? Her backpack contained legal documents, nothing more. But his words suggested he knew something about the contents that she did not. The thought terrified her. Had someone tampered with her case files? Was this connected to her lawsuit? The struggle continued for several seconds, with both Maya and the young man pulling at the backpack. Other protesters began to notice the commotion, some trying to help, others stepping back to avoid getting involved. The noise level increased as people shouted questions and demands. "Someone help her," called out a woman with gray hair who was holding a sign about tenant rights. "Call security," shouted another voice from the crowd. Maya felt her grip on the backpack strap beginning to slip. The young man was stronger than her, and he seemed desperate. Just as she thought she might lose her grip entirely, she heard a commanding voice cut through the chaos. "Stand down." The voice was calm but carried absolute authority. It was the kind of voice that expected immediate obedience, and, surprisingly, the young man actually hesitated. Maya looked around frantically and saw a police officer approaching through the crowd. He was not in riot gear like some of the others she had seen. Instead, he wore a standard police uniform and moved with the measured confidence of someone who had handled countless similar situations. Officer James Patterson was a 15-year veteran of the city police force. At 50 years old, he had seen enough violence and chaos to know that sometimes the most effective tool in his arsenal was not force, but calm, clear communication. He had been assigned to monitor the protest today, specifically because of his reputation for de-escalating tense situations without resorting to aggressive tactics. Patterson had been watching the crowd from a distance when he noticed the altercation between Maya and the young man. His trained eye immediately assessed the situation. This did not appear to be a simple mugging. The young man's behavior suggested he was looking for something specific, and the woman's desperate attempts to hold onto her backpack indicated it contained something important to her. As Patterson approached, he kept his hands visible and his posture non-threatening. He had learned long ago that arriving at a scene with aggression often made situations worse rather than better. His goal was always to restore calm first, then determine what had actually happened. "Stand down," he repeated, this time looking directly at the young man. "Let's all take a breath and figure out what's going on here." The young man's grip on the backpack loosened slightly, but he did not let go completely. His eyes darted between Patterson and Maya, as if calculating his options. Maya could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. "Officer, this man is trying to steal my backpack," Maya said quickly, hoping to clarify the situation before it escalated further. "I don't know what he wants, but these are my legal documents for a court case." Patterson nodded, acknowledging Maya's statement while keeping his primary attention on the young man. He could see that the situation was delicate. The protester crowd was watching intently, and any use of force could potentially spark a larger incident. "What's your name, son?" Patterson asked the young man, his tone remaining calm and conversational. The young man hesitated, then said quietly, "Marcus. Marcus Johnson." "Okay, Marcus. I'm Officer Patterson. Can you tell me why you're trying to take this lady's bag?" Marcus looked around nervously. The crowd had formed a loose circle around them, creating a sense of being on stage that clearly made him uncomfortable. Maya could see his hands shaking slightly as he maintained his grip on her backpack. "She doesn't know," Marcus said finally. "She doesn't know what's in there." Patterson raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean by that?" "Someone put something in her bag. Something that could hurt people. I was trying to get it before." Marcus trailed off, seeming to realize he might be saying too much. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you talking about?" "I packed this bag myself this morning. There's nothing in here except my legal papers." "When did you pack it?" Patterson asked Maya, while keeping one eye on Marcus. "About an hour ago at home. I grabbed all my documents from my desk and put them in the bag, then came straight here." Maya's voice was becoming strained with anxiety. "What could possibly be in there that I don't know about?" Marcus seemed to be struggling with an internal decision. Finally, he looked directly at Patterson and said, "There's a device. Someone planted it in her bag. It's set to go off inside the courthouse." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Her legs felt weak, and she had to steady herself against a nearby person. "That's impossible," she whispered. "No one had access to my bag except me." Patterson's demeanor shifted slightly. While maintaining his calm exterior, Maya could see his muscles tense. He was now treating this as a potential bomb threat, which changed everything about the situation. "Marcus, I need you to very slowly let go of the bag and step back," Patterson said. His voice remained controlled, but there was now an edge of urgency. "Ma'am, I need you to very gently set the bag down on the ground and step away from it." Maya's hands were shaking as she followed his instructions. The idea that she had been carrying an explosive device was almost impossible to process. How could someone have accessed her bag? When could it have happened? As she set the backpack on the concrete steps, Maya tried to remember every detail of her morning. She had woken up at 6:30, made coffee, gathered her documents from the desk in her bedroom, and packed them carefully in the bag. Then, she had taken a shower, gotten dressed, and left the apartment. The bag had been with her the entire time, except when she had stopped at the coffee shop 3 blocks from the courthouse. She had left the bag at her table while she went to the counter to order. It had only been for a minute or two, but now that seemed like an eternity. Could someone have approached her table during that brief time? Patterson was now speaking quietly into his radio, calling for backup and the bomb squad. Maya heard fragments of his conversation: potential explosive device, courthouse evacuation, crowd control. The reality of the situation was beginning to sink in for everyone present. The protesters around them had gone quiet, sensing that something much more serious than a simple theft was unfolding. Some began to back away, while others seemed frozen in place, uncertain whether to flee or stay to see what happened next. Marcus had stepped back as instructed, but he was still standing close enough to hear Patterson's radio conversation. Maya could see him becoming more agitated as the implications became clear. "This is all wrong," Marcus said suddenly. "This isn't how it was supposed to happen." Patterson immediately focused his attention back on the young man. "What do you mean by that, Marcus? What was supposed to happen?" Marcus looked around at the crowd, then back at the backpack sitting on the steps. Maya could see tears forming in his eyes. "I was supposed to prevent this. Someone called me this morning and told me that a woman with a black backpack would be bringing an explosive device into the courthouse. They said I was the only one who could stop it because I would be here with the protesters." "Who called you?" Patterson asked. "I don't know." The voice was disguised, like they were using one of those voice changer things. "They said if I didn't stop the attack, people would die, including some of my friends who work in the courthouse." Marcus was now visibly crying. "I thought I was being a hero." Maya felt a complex mixture of emotions. On one hand, if Marcus was telling the truth, he had potentially saved lives by trying to take her backpack. On the other hand, she was now facing the terrifying possibility that she had unknowingly been turned into a would-be terrorist. Patterson continued his careful questioning. "Did this person give you any proof that there was actually a device in the bag?" Marcus shook his head. "They just said to look for a woman with a black backpack approaching the courthouse around 9:30. They described her perfectly, her height, her hair, even what she was wearing." He looked at Maya apologetically. "I'm sorry. I didn't want to hurt you. I just wanted to save people." Maya realized that whoever had orchestrated this had been watching her. They knew her routine, her appearance, even her court schedule. The thought made her feel violated and deeply afraid. Patterson was now facing a complex situation. He had a potential explosive device that needed to be secured, a crowd that needed to be safely evacuated, and two people whose stories needed to be thoroughly investigated. His years of experience told him that both Maya and Marcus appeared to be telling the truth, which meant there was a third party involved who had set this entire scenario in motion. The sound of approaching sirens indicated that backup was arriving. Patterson knew that within minutes, the area would be swarming with bomb squad technicians, federal agents, and incident commanders. His role was about to shift from primary responder to witness and initial report provider. "Marcus, I need you to stay right here with Officer Williams when he arrives," Patterson said, gesturing to a colleague who was approaching through the crowd. "We're going to need a full statement from you about this phone call and anything else you might remember." He turned to Maya. "Ma'am, I know this is frightening, but I need you to think very carefully about this morning and yesterday. Has anyone approached you about your court case? Anyone offered to help or shown unusual interest in your legal proceedings?" Maya's mind raced through recent conversations. Her case had been covered briefly in the local newspaper, so some people knew about it. Her neighbors were aware of her situation, and she had discussed it with her children and a few close friends. But no strangers had approached her, and no one had shown inappropriate interest. "I can't think of anyone," she said. "But, officer, what about my court case? My lawyer is waiting for me, and if I don't appear today, I could lose everything." Patterson looked at her with sympathy. "Ma'am, I understand this is important to you, but right now we need to focus on making sure everyone is safe. Once the bomb squad clears the device, if there really is one, we can worry about your legal proceedings." As if summoned by his words, a team of bomb squad technicians arrived, wearing full protective gear and carrying detection equipment. The crowd was now being pushed back to a much greater distance, and Maya found herself being escorted away from her backpack and everything it represented. Standing behind the police barriers that had been quickly erected, Maya watched as technicians approached her bag with robotic precision. She felt like she was watching her entire future being examined under a microscope. If the device was real, she would face questions about how it got there and whether she was involved. If it was not real, she might still miss her court appearance, which could be just as devastating to her case. Marcus stood nearby, flanked by two officers, but not in handcuffs. Maya could see that he was cooperating fully, answering questions, and providing details about the mysterious phone call. Despite everything that had happened, she found herself believing his story. His distress seemed genuine, and his willingness to identify himself and cooperate suggested he was not part of any larger conspiracy. As the bomb squad worked, Maya's thoughts turned to her children. Carmen was in class at the university, probably unaware of what was happening. Miguel was at work at the auto shop. Neither of them knew that their mother had potentially been used as an unwitting accomplice in a terrorist plot. How would she explain this to them? How would she explain it to anyone? The crowd of protesters had been completely dispersed now, their housing rights demonstration forgotten in the face of the bomb threat. Maya realized that this might have been part of the plan to disrupt the protest as well as her court case. But who would want to do such a thing, and why? Patterson approached Maya as she stood behind the barriers. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to come with me to give a full statement. We have a lot of questions to ask, and the federal investigators will want to interview you as well." "Federal investigators?" Maya asked, feeling overwhelmed. "Anytime there's a potential terrorist threat, the FBI gets involved," Patterson explained. "They'll want to know everything about your background, your case, and anyone who might have had access to your belongings." Maya nodded numbly. She was beginning to understand that her life was about to be turned upside down in ways she had never imagined. The legal case that had consumed her thoughts for months now seemed like a minor concern compared to the possibility that someone had tried to use her as a weapon. As Patterson began to escort her toward a police vehicle, Maya took one last look at her backpack, still sitting on the courthouse steps surrounded by bomb squad technicians. Everything she had worked for, everything she had hoped to achieve, was contained in that bag. Now it might all be destroyed, not by legal defeat, but by circumstances completely beyond her control. The irony was not lost on her. She had come to court seeking justice, only to find herself at the center of an injustice far greater than anything her former employer had done to her. Someone had violated her life, her trust, and her sense of security in the most profound way possible. As she settled into the back seat of the police car, Maya wondered if she would ever feel safe again. The police station's interview room was nothing like the sterile, intimidating spaces Maya had seen on television crime shows. Instead, it felt more like a small conference room with beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and a table surrounded by four mismatched chairs. Detective Sarah Chun, no relation to Maya's lawyer despite the shared surname, sat across from her with a notepad and digital recorder. Officer Patterson remained in the room, having been assigned to continue with the case given his initial involvement. Maya had been at the station for 3 hours now. During that time, she had learned that the bomb squad had indeed found a device in her backpack, a sophisticated piece of equipment that could have caused significant damage and loss of life. The knowledge sat in her stomach like a cold stone. Someone had turned her into a potential killer without her knowledge or consent. "Let's go through yesterday one more time," Detective Chun said gently. Unlike the harsh interrogators Maya had feared, Chun had a calm, methodical approach that seemed designed to gather information rather than intimidate. "You said you stayed home most of the day?" Maya nodded, wrapping her hands around the lukewarm cup of coffee an officer had brought her. "I had a cleaning job in the morning at Mrs. Patterson's house. That's on Elm Street, about 10 minutes from my apartment. I finished around noon, then went home and spent the rest of the day preparing for court." "Mrs. Patterson," Officer Patterson interjected with interest. "Any relation to me?" "I don't think so. She's elderly, maybe 75. Her first name is Dorothy. She's been one of my regular clients since I lost my job at Meridian." Maya looked between the two officers. "Is that important somehow?" Detective Chun made a note. "We're trying to establish who might have had access to your personal information or your routine. Tell me about this cleaning job. How did you get it?" "Mrs. Patterson called me directly. I clean her house every Tuesday and Friday. She pays cash, and she's always been very kind to me. Yesterday was just a regular day. I vacuumed, mopped, cleaned the bathroom and kitchen. Nothing unusual happened." "How did she get your phone number originally?" Maya thought back. "I think she got it from Mrs. Rodriguez. No relation, we just have the same last name, who lives on Pine Street. I clean for her too. Mrs. Rodriguez recommended me when Mrs. Patterson was looking for help after her regular cleaning lady moved away." Detective Chun continued taking notes. Maya was struck by how every detail of her life was now potentially significant. People she had barely thought about in months were becoming part of a federal investigation. After you finished at Mrs. Patterson's house, you went straight home. Yes. I stopped at the grocery store to pick up a few things, milk, bread, some fruit. Then, I went home and spent the afternoon organizing my legal documents and preparing for today's court appearance. Did anyone visit your apartment yesterday evening? Maya shook her head. No visitors. My daughter Carmen called around 7 to wish me luck with court today. My son Miguel texted me later to ask if I needed him to come with me to court, but I told him I would be fine on my own. She paused, realizing how wrong that assessment had been. What about this morning? Walk us through everything from when you woke up. Maya had already told this story twice, but she understood the need for repetition. Details that seemed insignificant the first time might become important upon closer examination. I woke up around 6:30. I made coffee and toast for breakfast. Then, I gathered all my documents. They were in a folder on my desk in the bedroom. I put them in my backpack along with a bottle of water and some tissues. I took a shower, got dressed, and left the apartment around 8:45. You said you stopped at a coffee shop? Yes, Sunrise Cafe, about 3 blocks from the courthouse. I got there around 9:15 and ordered a large coffee and a muffin. I sat at a table near the window and went through my documents one more time to make sure I had everything. Detective Chun leaned forward slightly. This is important, Maya. How long did you leave your backpack unattended when you went to order? Maya closed her eyes, trying to reconstruct the scene precisely. I left it on the chair while I walked to the counter. There was a line, maybe 3 or 4 people ahead of me. It probably took about 2 minutes to order and pay, then another minute for them to prepare my coffee. 3 or 4 minutes total that the bag was unattended? Yes, approximately. But I could see my table from the counter. I was watching to make sure no one took my seat. Officer Patterson spoke up. Could someone have approached your table during that time without you noticing? Maya considered this carefully. Maybe. I was focused on the line and making sure I had my money ready. The cafe was busy. There were people moving around, finding tables, leaving. Someone could have walked past my table without me paying attention. Did you notice anyone in particular? Anyone who seemed to be paying attention to you or your belongings? Not that I remember. But, to be honest, I was nervous about court and thinking about what I needed to say to my lawyer. I might not have noticed unless someone was being really obvious about it. Detective Chun made more notes, then set down her pen and looked directly at Maya. I need to ask you some more personal questions now. Is there anyone in your life who might want to hurt you? Anyone who has threatened you or expressed anger toward you? The question made Maya uncomfortable, not because she was hiding anything, but because it forced her to examine her relationships and interactions in a new light. I can't think of anyone. I mean, I'm sure some people at Meridian weren't happy when I reported the safety violations and wage theft, but I never received any direct threats. Tell us more about that situation. What exactly did you report, and to whom? Maya shifted in her chair. This was the story she had been preparing to tell in court, but she had never expected to tell it to police in connection with a bomb threat. I worked as a night shift supervisor at Meridian Office Complex for 3 years. My job was to oversee the cleaning crew and make sure all the offices were properly cleaned and secured. About 6 months before I was fired, I started noticing some problems. What kind of problems? The cleaning chemicals we were using were not properly labeled, and some of them were stored in areas with poor ventilation. The crew members were complaining about headaches and respiratory issues, but management told us to just open windows. I also discovered that several of my crew members were being paid less than minimum wage, despite working overtime hours. Detective Chin nodded encouragingly. What did you do with this information? I documented everything. I took photos of the improperly stored chemicals, kept copies of timesheets that showed overtime hours, and recorded complaints from crew members about health issues. I presented all of this to my immediate supervisor, Frank Morrison. How did Morrison respond? He told me he would look into it, but nothing changed. After 2 weeks, I went over his head and contacted the building owner's management company directly. I also filed complaints with OSHA and the Department of Labor. Officer Patterson leaned forward. That must have made some people angry. Apparently it did. Within 2 weeks of filing those complaints, I was called into Morrison's office and told that my position was being eliminated due to budget cuts. They said they were reorganizing the cleaning operation and no longer needed a night supervisor. Maya's voice carried the bitter disappointment she still felt months later. Did you believe the budget cut explanation? Not for a second. They eliminated my position but kept all the same crew members and still needed someone to supervise them. They just distributed those responsibilities among the day shift supervisors, who were already overworked. Detective Chun consulted her notes. And this is the case you were supposed to argue in court today? Yes. My lawyer believes we have a strong case for wrongful termination and retaliation. The timing of my firing so soon after filing the complaints is pretty clear evidence of retaliation. Maya paused. At least, it was clear until this morning. What do you mean? Well, now I'm wondering if someone connected to Meridian might have been behind this bomb threat. Maybe they wanted to prevent me from going to court or discredit me in some way. Officer Patterson and Detective Chun exchanged glances. Maya could tell they had already considered this possibility. We're certainly looking at all angles, Detective Chun said carefully. Can you give us the names of everyone at Meridian who might have been affected by your complaints? Maya provided names and contact information for Frank Morrison, the building management company executives, and several crew members who had supported her complaints. She also gave them her lawyer's contact information and suggested they might want to review the case files. Has anyone connected to your lawsuit contacted you recently? Any settlement offers, requests to drop the case, anything like that? No, nothing like that. My lawyer has been in contact with their legal team, but everything has gone through him. No one from Meridian has contacted me directly since I was fired. Detective Chun stood up and stretched. They had been talking for over an hour, and Maya was beginning to feel emotionally drained. The reality of the situation continued to hit her in waves. Someone had tried to use her as a weapon. Her court case was now in jeopardy, and her life was under microscopic examination by law enforcement. Maya, I want you to know that we don't consider you a suspect in this, Detective Chun said. Everything about your story checks out, and your reaction this morning was clearly genuine. But we do need to figure out who did this and why. What happens now? Maya asked. Am I free to go? You're not under arrest, but we'd like you to stay available for additional questions as our investigation continues. We're also going to have agents interview your children, your lawyer, and several other people in your life. I hope you understand that this is necessary. Maya nodded, though the thought of Carmen and Miguel being questioned by federal agents made her stomach churn. Will this affect my court case? That's not really for us to say. You should contact your lawyer and explain what happened. The judge will have to decide whether to postpone the hearing or proceed without you. Officer Patterson spoke up. Maya, I want to ask you about Marcus Johnson, the young man who tried to take your backpack. Did you recognize him at all? Had you ever seen him before? No, I'm certain I'd never seen him before this morning. He seemed to know about the device in my bag, though. Do you think he was telling the truth about getting that phone call? We're still investigating that. Marcus is cooperating fully with our questions, and his story has been consistent. We're trying to trace the phone call he claims to have received, but it appears to have come from a prepaid cell phone that's no longer active. Detective Chun returned to her seat. We need to talk about your personal security going forward. Whoever did this knows where you live, what you look like, and details about your daily routine. Until we catch them, you could potentially be in danger. The words sent a chill through Maya. She had been so focused on the immediate crisis that she had not fully considered the ongoing threat. What kind of danger? We don't know yet. This could have been a one-time attempt to disrupt your court case, or it could be part of a larger plan. The device in your bag was sophisticated. It wasn't something an amateur could have built. We're dealing with someone who has resources and technical knowledge. Are you saying I need police protection? We're saying you need to be very careful and aware of your surroundings. Change your routine. Don't go places alone if you can avoid it. And report anything unusual immediately. Maya thought about her small apartment, her elderly clients who depended on her for cleaning services, her children who would worry themselves sick if they knew the full extent of the threat. How am I supposed to live like that? I can't afford to hire bodyguards or move to a safe house. We understand this is difficult, Officer Patterson said. We'll have patrol units drive by your apartment more frequently, and we can install a panic button system that will alert us immediately if you feel threatened. The offer was reassuring, but also terrifying. Maya had never imagined that her simple quest for workplace justice would result in needing police protection. She felt like she had stepped through a doorway into a completely different life, one where danger lurked around every corner. "There's something else we need to discuss," Detective Chen said. "The media has gotten wind of this story. There were reporters at the courthouse this morning, and they've been calling the station asking for information." "The media?" Maya felt her heart sink. "What are they saying?" "So far, just basic facts, that there was a bomb threat at the courthouse and that a suspect is in custody. But your name is likely to come out soon, especially since your court case is a matter of public record." Maya imagined her face on the evening news, her story twisted and sensationalized. "Will they say I was involved in planning this? We'll make it clear to any reporters we speak with that you were an unwitting victim, not a perpetrator. But you should prepare yourself for media attention. You might want to consider having your lawyer help you navigate that." The thought of media attention added another layer of stress to an already overwhelming situation. Maya had never wanted to be a public figure. She just wanted to clear her name, get compensation for being wrongfully fired, and move on with her life. A knock on the door interrupted Maya's thoughts. Detective Chun stepped outside for a moment, leaving Maya alone with Officer Patterson. "This is a lot to process," Patterson said kindly. "How are you holding up?" Maya looked at the man who had potentially saved her life and the lives of many others with his calm intervention that morning. "I keep thinking this must be a nightmare that I'll wake up from. This morning, I was just a woman trying to get justice from her former employer. Now I'm in the middle of a federal terrorism investigation. I've been doing this job for 15 years, and I've learned that sometimes innocent people get caught up in situations that are completely beyond their control. The important thing is that you're safe, and we're going to find whoever did this to you. Do you really think it might be connected to my lawsuit?" Patterson considered the question carefully. "It's certainly possible. The timing is suspicious. The device was planted on the very day you were supposed to appear in court. Someone wanted to either prevent you from testifying or discredit you in some way. The question is whether this was about your specific case or whether you were chosen randomly for some other purpose." Detective Chun returned to the room carrying a manila folder. "Maya, we've got some preliminary results from the bomb squad. The device in your bag was quite sophisticated. It included a timer mechanism and remote detonation capability. This wasn't built by an amateur." "What does that mean?" "It means we're probably dealing with someone who has access to advanced technology and expertise, or who hired someone who does. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment plan. It required significant preparation and resources." Maya felt overwhelmed by the implications. "So this isn't just about my lawsuit. Whoever did this has the resources to hire professional bomb makers." "We don't know yet. It could be that your lawsuit threatened someone with significant resources, or it could be that you were chosen for reasons we don't understand yet. We're exploring every possibility." The detective opened the folder and spread several photographs on the table. Maya could see images of the device that had been hidden in her backpack, a complex assemblage of wires, circuit boards, and what appeared to be plastic explosives. The bomb squad estimates that this device would have caused significant damage to the courthouse and potentially killed or injured dozens of people, Detective Chin explained. "We're very lucky that Marcus Johnson received that anonymous phone call, whatever the motivation behind it." Maya stared at the photographs, trying to comprehend that she had been carrying this instrument of death and destruction without knowing it. "How could someone hide this in my bag without me noticing the weight difference?" The device weighed about 3 pounds, and it was designed to fit among your legal documents. If you were carrying a lot of papers, you might not have noticed the additional weight, especially if you were distracted or nervous about your court appearance. 3 pounds, Maya repeated. "Someone added 3 pounds of explosives to my bag, and I didn't notice." The guilt and self-recrimination in her voice was obvious. Officer Patterson leaned forward. "Maya, there's no way you could have known. Whoever did this was counting on your routine, your normal behavior. They used your own habits against you. That's not your fault." Detective Chun nodded in agreement. "We've seen this before in other cases. Terrorists often try to use innocent people as unwitting accomplices because it makes their plans harder to detect and gives them plausible deniability if something goes wrong." The word terrorists hit Maya like a physical blow. She was now officially a victim of terrorism. The thought was almost impossible to process. What happens next in your investigation? We're analyzing the device for fingerprints, DNA evidence, and any clues about where the components were purchased. We're also looking into everyone connected to your lawsuit and your personal life. And we're working with federal agencies to see if this matches any patterns from other cases. How long will that take? It could be weeks or months. These investigations are complex, and we want to make sure we catch everyone involved, not just whoever planted the device. Maya realized that her life was going to be disrupted for much longer than she had initially thought. Can I at least call my children? They're going to be worried when they see this on the news. Detective Chun handed her a phone. Of course, but please don't give them too many details about the investigation. We need to control what information becomes public while we're still gathering evidence. As Maya dialed Carmen's number, she wondered how she would explain this situation to her daughter without causing panic or worry. How do you tell your child that someone tried to turn you into a terrorist without knowing it? How do you maintain any sense of normalcy when your entire world has been turned upside down? The investigation was just beginning, but Maya already knew that regardless of the outcome, her life would never be the same. Someone had violated her trust, her security, and her sense of safety in the most profound way possible. Even if they caught the perpetrators, even if her lawsuit was eventually resolved, she would always carry the knowledge that she had unknowingly become a weapon in someone else's war. 3 days after the incident at the courthouse, Maya sat in her small living room watching the evening news with a growing sense of dread. The story had exploded across local and national media, with her name and photo appearing alongside headlines about the unwitting bomber and courthouse terror plot foiled. Despite Detective Chin's assurances that law enforcement would make clear Maya's innocence, the media narrative was far more complex and damaging than she had anticipated. Her phone buzzed constantly with calls from reporters, curiosity seekers, and people she had not spoken to in years. Carmen had driven down from college and was staying in Maya's apartment, refusing to leave her mother alone. Miguel had taken time off work and was sleeping on the couch, appointed himself Maya's unofficial bodyguard. Both children were struggling to understand how their mother had become the center of a federal terrorism investigation. "Mom, you need to stop watching this," Carmen said, reaching for the remote. "It's not helping anything." Maya waved her away, transfixed by a television interview with Frank Morrison, her former supervisor at Meridian Office Complex. He was speaking to a reporter outside the building where Maya used to work, his voice carrying a tone of shocked disbelief that Maya recognized as completely fabricated. Maya Rodriguez was always a troubled employee, Morrison was saying. She had difficulty getting along with other staff members and was constantly complaining about workplace policies. When we had to let her go due to budget constraints, she became very angry and made some concerning statements about getting revenge. "What kind of statements?" the reporter pressed. "I probably shouldn't repeat them, but she talked about making us pay for what we had done to her. At the time, we thought she was just upset about losing her job. Now, given what's happened, we're wondering if she was planning something like this all along." Maya felt like she had been punched in the stomach. "He's lying," she whispered. "I never said anything like that. I never threatened anyone." Carmen put her arm around her mother's shoulders. "Everyone knows he's lying, Mom. Your lawyer will handle this." But Maya was not so sure. Morrison's statements were carefully crafted to sound plausible without making any specific accusations that could get him in legal trouble. He was planting seeds of doubt about Maya's mental state and motivations while maintaining plausible deniability about whether he was actually accusing her of planning the bomb plot. Miguel looked up from his laptop, where he had been monitoring social media reactions to the news coverage. People online are split. About half are supporting you, saying you're obviously a victim. But the other half are asking questions about how you could not have known there was a 3-pound bomb in your bag. The questions that strangers were asking online were the same ones that haunted Maya in quiet moments. How had she not noticed the extra weight? How had she not felt suspicious when Marcus Johnson seemed to know about the device? Was she really as innocent as she claimed to be, or had she been willfully blind to something obvious? Detective Chun had warned her that these doubts were natural, and that even victims of crimes sometimes experienced guilt and self-recrimination. But knowing that her feelings were normal did not make them any less painful. Maya's lawyer, David Chun, had been working around the clock to manage both the legal implications of the bomb plot the status of Maya's original lawsuit against Meridian. The court had postponed her hearing indefinitely pending the resolution of the federal investigation, which meant her case was in limbo along with everything else in her life. A knock at the door made all three family members freeze. Maya was expecting Officer Patterson, who had been checking on her daily since the incident, but the rhythm of the knock was different, more urgent, and official. Miguel looked through the peephole and reported, "It's Detective Chun and two other people in suits." Maya opened the door to find Detective Chun accompanied by two FBI agents who introduced themselves as Agent Rodriguez. Yet another unrelated Rodriguez, Maya noted with bitter irony, and Agent Thompson. Their expressions were serious in a way that made Maya's stomach tighten with apprehension. "Maya, we need to talk to you about some new developments in the case," Detective Chun said. "Can we come in?" They settled in Maya's modest living room, the federal agents looking somewhat out of place among her secondhand furniture and family photos. Agent Rodriguez, a woman in her early 40s with short dark hair and intense eyes, took the lead in the conversation. "Ms. Rodriguez, we've made some progress in tracing the components of the explosive device that was planted in your backpack," Agent Rodriguez began. "What we've learned raises some new questions about this case." Maya felt her children tense beside her. "What kind of questions?" The device was built using components that were purchased from several different suppliers over the past 6 months. The purchases were made using credit cards registered to fake identities, but we've been able to trace some of the transactions through surveillance footage and other evidence. Agent Thompson, a tall man with graying hair who remained standing near the window, continued the explanation. "What's interesting is that the purchases were made in 3 different cities, here, in Chicago, and in Denver. This suggests either a sophisticated operation with multiple participants or someone who traveled extensively to acquire the necessary materials." Detective Chun leaned forward. "Maya, we need to ask you again about anyone in your life who might have access to significant resources or who might have connections in other cities." Maya shook her head. "I've already told you everything I can think of. I don't know anyone with that kind of money or those kinds of connections. Most of my friends and acquaintances are in similar financial situations to mine." "What about your legal case?" Agent Rodriguez asked. "Could Meridian Office Complex or their parent company have that kind of reach?" "I honestly don't know. It's a pretty big operation. They manage office buildings in several states. But using terrorism to stop a wrongful termination lawsuit seems like incredible overkill." Agent Thompson walked closer to the group. "That's what we thought initially, but we've been digging deeper into Meridian's business operations and ownership structure. There are some interesting connections we want to discuss with you." Maya waited, sensing that whatever they were about to tell her would complicate her life even further. Meridian Office Complex is owned by a subsidiary of Pinnacle Holdings, which is a real estate investment company with properties across the Midwest, Agent Rodriguez explained. Pinnacle Holdings has been the subject of several federal investigations over the past 5 years. "What kind of investigations?" "Money laundering, primarily. The company has been used as a vehicle to clean money from various illegal activities, including drug trafficking and human trafficking. The investigations have never resulted in charges because the evidence has always been circumstantial, and the corporate structure is deliberately complex to obscure ownership." Maya felt the room spinning slightly. "Are you saying my cleaning job was at a building owned by criminals?" "We're saying it's possible that your complaints about safety violations and wage theft may have drawn attention to activities at that building that the owners preferred to keep hidden," Detective Chin said. "Your documentation and reporting may have threatened to expose more than just labor violations." Carmen spoke up for the first time since the agents arrived. "So someone tried to blow up the courthouse to stop Mom from testifying about workplace safety? That still seems like overkill." Agent Thompson returned to his position by the window. "Unless she stumbled onto something bigger than workplace safety violations." "Maya, when you were documenting the problems at Meridian, did you ever see anything else unusual? People who seemed out of place, activities that didn't fit with normal office building operations, anything like that?" Maya tried to think back to her 3 years working at the building. Most of her time had been spent in public areas, lobbies, hallways, common restrooms, and in the offices of legitimate businesses that rented space in the building. But there had been a few things that had struck her as odd at the time. There was one floor that we were never allowed to clean, she said slowly. The fourth floor. Frank Morrison told us it was used for storage and that the tenants preferred to handle their own cleaning. Did you ever see anyone going to or from the fourth floor? Occasionally, usually late at night. They were always well-dressed, business-type people, but they seemed to work very unusual hours. Most office workers are gone by 6 or 7 p.m., but these people would be arriving at 10 or 11 at night. The agents exchanged glances. Agent Rodriguez made a note in her notepad. Anything else unusual about the building operations? Maya thought harder. There was a lot of cash transactions. Most office buildings today use electronic payment systems for everything, but Meridian always paid us in cash and seemed to prefer cash from tenants when possible. Frank Morrison once made a joke about being old-fashioned, but it struck me as unusual. Did you include any of this information in your complaints to OSHA and the Department of Labor? No, it wasn't related to safety violations or wage theft, so it didn't seem relevant to my complaints. I just mentioned the specific problems with chemical storage and overtime pay. Agent Thompson moved away from the window. Maya, it's possible that your complaints triggered an investigation or audit that someone was desperate to avoid. If Meridian was being used as a front for money laundering, any kind of government attention could have been seen as a serious threat. Miguel had been quiet during most of the conversation, but now he spoke up. So you're saying someone tried to turn my mother into a bomber just to avoid a workplace safety investigation? We're saying that's one possibility we're exploring, Agent Rodriguez replied. There could be other explanations, but the connection between the building ownership and previous federal investigations is too significant to ignore. Maya felt a wave of anger rising in her chest. So I lost my job because I was trying to protect the health and safety of my coworkers, and then someone tried to turn me into a terrorist because I might have accidentally threatened their criminal operation? That's a possibility we're investigating, Detective Chun said carefully. But we want to be very clear that this is still speculation. We don't have direct evidence connecting Pinnacle Holdings or anyone associated with them to the bomb plot. What about Marcus Johnson? Carmen asked. Where does he fit into this? Agent Rodriguez consulted her notes. Marcus is still cooperating with our investigation. We verified his story about receiving the anonymous phone call, and we found no evidence that he was connected to any larger conspiracy. It appears that someone used him as an unwitting accomplice, just as they used your mother. Someone wanted him to stop the bomb plot. Someone wanted him to intercept the device before it reached the courthouse, yes. The question is whether that person was trying to prevent the bombing or simply trying to retrieve the device without it being discovered by law enforcement. The implications of this possibility made Maya's head spin. Had Marcus actually saved lives by trying to take her backpack, or had he been manipulated into helping the real perpetrators cover their tracks? If someone wanted to retrieve the device, why not just take it when they planted it in the first place? Miguel asked. Agent Thompson answered. Because if the device had simply disappeared, Maya would have reported her missing backpack to police, and we might have investigated the theft. By using Marcus to intercept it publicly, they created a scenario where the device would be discovered and Maya would be blamed for carrying it. Maya realized she was being used in even more complex ways than she had initially understood. So I was supposed to be the fall guy? If Marcus hadn't tried to take the bag, I would have walked into the courthouse with a bomb and been arrested as a terrorist. That's one possible scenario, Detective Chin said. But remember, this is still largely speculation. We're following multiple leads and considering various possibilities. Agent Rodriguez closed her notepad and looked directly at Maya. We need your help with the next phase of our investigation. We want to set up surveillance on the Meridian building to see if we can identify unusual activities or people connected to Pinnacle Holdings. What kind of help? We'd like you to return to work there. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Return to work? They fired me 8 months ago. We know. But we've been in contact with Frank Morrison, and we've convinced him that hiring you back would demonstrate good faith given the recent media attention. He's agreed to offer you a temporary position helping with a security review of the building. Maya looked around at her children, both of whom appeared stunned by this suggestion. You want me to go back to work for the people who might have tried to kill me? We want you to help us gather evidence against the people who definitely tried to use you as a weapon, Agent Thompson said. This could be your chance to get real justice, not just for yourself, but for other potential victims. Carmen stood up abruptly. This is insane. You're asking my mother to put herself in danger to help with your investigation. What if these people figure out what she's doing? We'll have surveillance and backup in place, Agent Rodriguez said. Maya would never be alone or unprotected. But she'd still be taking a huge risk, Miguel added. And for what? To help you build a case against people who might not even be responsible for what happened. Maya found herself considering the proposal despite her children's objections. The idea of returning to Meridian was terrifying, but it also offered something she had not expected, the possibility of taking an active role in the investigation rather than remaining a passive victim. How long would this assignment last? She asked. Probably several weeks, maybe a few months. We need time to establish patterns of activity and identify key players. And what would happen to my original lawsuit? That would have to remain on hold until the federal investigation is complete, Detective Chen said. But if we can prove that Meridian was involved in criminal activities, your wrongful termination case would become much stronger. Maya realized that accepting this assignment would mean putting her entire life on hold indefinitely. But the alternative was waiting months or years for the investigation to conclude while living in fear and uncertainty. I need time to think about this, she said finally. Agent Rodriguez stood up. Of course, but we need an answer soon. Every day we wait makes it more likely that potential evidence will disappear or that the people responsible will cover their tracks. After the law enforcement officers left, Maya sat in her living room with her children, all three of them trying to process the complexity of what they had just learned. The simple wrongful termination case that had started this entire ordeal had potentially uncovered a much larger criminal conspiracy. Mom, you can't seriously be considering going back there, Carmen said. I don't know what I'm considering, Maya replied honestly. A week ago, my biggest problem was finding enough cleaning jobs to pay rent. Now I'm being asked to help the FBI investigate international money laundering. Miguel was researching Pinnacle Holdings on his laptop. There's not much information available online about this company. Most of the search results are just basic corporate filings and property ownership records, which probably means they work hard to stay out of the public eye, Maya said. Carmen sat back down beside her mother. What are you thinking, really? Maya stared out the window at the familiar neighborhood where she had lived for 5 years. It was a working-class area where people minded their own business and tried to make honest livings despite economic challenges. She had always felt safe here, but that sense of security had been shattered by recent events. I'm thinking that someone turned me into a weapon and nearly made me a killer, Maya said quietly. I'm thinking that if I don't help catch them, they might do the same thing to someone else. And I'm thinking that maybe this is my chance to finally get some real answers about why my life has been turned upside down. Carmen and Miguel looked at each other, recognizing the determined tone in their mother's voice that they remembered from childhood, the tone she used when she had made up her mind about something important. If you decide to do this, Miguel said, we're going to be involved too. We're not letting you face this alone. Maya smiled at her son's protectiveness, but she also felt a deep sadness that her problems had become her children's problems. She had worked so hard to give them better lives than she had experienced, and now they were being pulled into a dangerous situation because of her choices. This isn't your fight, she told them. Yes, it is, Carmen said firmly. When someone attacks our mother, it becomes our fight too. As Maya looked at her children's determined faces, she realized that the decision about whether to help with the FBI investigation was not just about her own desire for justice or closure. It was about the kind of example she wanted to set for Carmen and Miguel, and the kind of world she wanted them to inherit. Someone had tried to use her as a weapon of mass destruction, and the only way to ensure it never happened again was to help law enforcement catch them. The risks were significant, but so were the potential consequences of doing nothing. Maya picked up the phone to call Agent Rodriguez. 6 weeks after Maya had agreed to work undercover for the FBI, she sat in a surveillance van 2 blocks from Meridian office complex, watching monitors that showed various angles of the building she now knew intimately. What had started as a simple wrongful termination case had evolved into one of the largest money laundering investigations in the region's history. Agent Rodriguez adjusted her headset and spoke quietly into her microphone. Overwatch to Phoenix. How are you feeling today? Phoenix was Maya's code name for the operation. She touched the nearly invisible earpiece that kept her connected to the surveillance team. "Nervous, but ready," she replied. "Today should be the day we get access to the fourth floor." After weeks of working as a security consultant at Meridian, Maya had slowly gained the trust of Frank Morrison and other building management staff. Her cover story was that she was conducting a comprehensive security review following the courthouse incident, looking for vulnerabilities that might have allowed someone to learn her routine and target her. The irony of investigating her own targeting was not lost on anyone involved in the operation. During her time back in the building, Maya had observed patterns that confirmed the FBI's suspicions. The fourth floor operated on a completely different schedule from the rest of the building. While legitimate businesses maintained normal daytime hours, the fourth floor showed activity primarily at night and on weekends. People entering the fourth floor used a separate elevator that required a special keycard, and they rarely interacted with tenants from other floors. Maya had also noticed that Frank Morrison's role in the building was much more complex than she had previously understood. While he presented himself as a simple building manager, he seemed to have authority over operations that went far beyond typical property management. He had keys to every office, access to all security systems, and regular contact with people who were clearly not typical office tenants. "Phoenix, we have movement on the ground floor." Agent Thompson's voice came through her earpiece. 3 individuals just entered the building using the fourth floor elevator. Maya was positioned in the building's main security office, ostensibly reviewing surveillance footage for her security assessment. In reality, she was using her access to the building's camera system to provide real-time intelligence to the FBI team outside. "I can see them on camera too," Maya whispered. 2 men and 1 woman, all wearing business suits. They're carrying briefcases and appear to be going directly to the fourth floor elevator. Through her computer screen, Maya watched the 3 individuals enter the special elevator and disappear from view. The fourth floor had its own internal security system that was separate from the building's main network, so the FBI team had no visual access to what happened once people reached that level. "Any sign of Morrison?" Agent Rodriguez asked. "He's in his office on the 2nd floor, but he's been making phone calls all morning. Based on his body language, something important is happening today." Maya had become skilled at reading Morrison's behavior over the past 6 weeks. When he was managing routine building operations, he was relaxed and casual. But when the fourth floor tenants were active, he became tense and alert, constantly checking his phone and monitoring the building's security systems. Agent Thompson's voice came through the earpiece again. "Phoenix, we just intercepted electronic communications suggesting that a major financial transaction is scheduled for today. This could be our chance to gather evidence about the money laundering operation." Maya felt her heart rate increase. After weeks of careful surveillance and intelligence gathering, they were finally approaching the moment when they would need concrete evidence to build a criminal case. Her role was about to become much more dangerous. "What do you need me to do?" she asked quietly. "We need you to get onto the fourth floor during the transaction," Agent Rodriguez said. "We've prepared a cover story about needing to inspect the emergency exits for your security report." Maya had been dreading this moment. Getting onto the fourth floor would require her to directly confront Frank Morrison and demand access to an area that was clearly off-limits. If Morrison was involved in the criminal operation, he would immediately become suspicious of her request. "Copy that," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm moving toward Morrison's office now." Maya left the security office and walked down the hallway toward the building management offices, her footsteps echoing in the quiet corridor. Most of the building's legitimate tenants were busy with their normal work activities, unaware that a major law enforcement operation was unfolding around them. Frank Morrison was on the phone when Maya knocked on his office door. He gestured for her to enter while continuing his conversation, which appeared to be about scheduling and logistics for some kind of meeting. "I understand the timeline," Morrison was saying. "Everything will be ready by 3 o'clock. Yes, the usual precautions are in place." Maya sat in the chair across from Morrison's desk, pretending to review her notes while actually listening to his phone conversation. Through her earpiece, she could hear Agent Rodriguez and Agent Thompson discussing the implications of what Morrison was saying. "Sounds like a meeting at 3 p.m., Agent Rodriguez whispered. "That's less than an hour from now." Morrison finished his phone call and turned his attention to Maya. Sorry about that. How's the security assessment going? Very well, Maya replied, consulting her fake notes. I've completed my review of the first 3 floors, and I'm ready to move on to the 4th floor. I need to inspect the emergency exits and fire safety systems up there. Morrison's expression changed almost imperceptibly. Maya had worked with him long enough to recognize the subtle signs of stress, a slight tightening around his eyes, a pause before responding, a shift in his posture. The 4th floor is mostly storage, Morrison said carefully. I'm not sure there's much up there that would be relevant to your security assessment. Actually, storage areas are particularly important from a security standpoint, Maya said, following the script that Agent Rodriguez had coached her to use. They're often the most vulnerable parts of a building because people assume they're not worth protecting. Morrison appeared to be calculating his options. Maya could see him weighing the risks of refusing her request against the risks of allowing her access to the 4th floor. Let me check with the tenants up there, Morrison said finally. They're very particular about their privacy and security arrangements. Of course, Maya said. But I should mention that emergency exit inspections are required by law. If I can't complete a full assessment, I'll have to note that in my report. The threat was subtle but clear. Morrison understood that Maya's security report would become part of the building's official documentation, and any limitations on her access would raise questions with regulatory authorities. Give me a few minutes to make some calls, Morrison said. As Morrison reached for his phone, Maya heard Agent Rodriguez's voice in her earpiece. Phoenix, we're seeing increased activity around the building. Several additional vehicles have arrived, and we've identified at least 2 individuals with connections to known criminal organizations. Maya tried to remain calm while Morrison made his calls. She was now sitting in the office of someone who might have orchestrated the bomb plot that nearly killed her, pretending to be conducting a routine security assessment while actually gathering evidence for a federal investigation. Morrison's phone conversations were brief and cryptic, but Maya could tell that he was requesting permission for something and receiving resistance. After 3 calls, he hung up and looked at Maya with obvious frustration. They're in the middle of an important business meeting, Morrison said. Can you come back tomorrow to inspect the 4th floor? Maya knew that tomorrow might be too late. If a major financial transaction was happening today, the evidence might disappear by tomorrow. She needed to find a way to get onto the 4th floor immediately. I understand that timing is important, Maya said, but I'm concerned about liability issues. If there's an emergency and the exits aren't properly maintained, the building management could face serious legal consequences. Morrison stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the parking lot where Maya knew FBI surveillance teams were positioned. After a long moment, he turned back to Maya. All right, he said, but we need to be very quick, and you can't disturb their meeting. Maya felt a rush of adrenaline. Of course, I'll be as efficient as possible. Morrison led Maya to the special elevator that served the 4th floor. As they rode up together, Maya could feel the tension radiating from him. Through her earpiece, she heard Agent Rodriguez giving instructions to the surveillance team. All units, Phoenix is moving to the 4th floor. Maintain ready positions. The elevator doors opened onto a hallway that was completely different from the rest of the building. Instead of the standard office carpeting and fluorescent lighting, the 4th floor was decorated with expensive hardwood flooring and sophisticated lighting fixtures. The walls were lined with artwork that Maya suspected was worth more than her annual salary. This way, Morrison said, leading her toward what appeared to be emergency exit doors at the end of the hallway. As they walked, Maya could hear voices coming from behind closed doors. The conversations were quiet, but intense, with occasional references to numbers that sounded like financial figures. Through her earpiece, she heard Agent Thompson confirming that electronic surveillance equipment was picking up the same conversations. Phoenix, try to get visual confirmation of the participants if possible, Agent Rodriguez whispered. Maya pretended to examine the emergency exit while actually looking for ways to see into the rooms where the meetings were taking place. Most of the doors were solid wood with no windows, but one office had a glass panel that was partially obscured by blinds. The exit mechanism looks good, Maya said loudly, hoping to establish her presence for anyone listening. Then, she walked toward the office with the glass panel, pretending to check another exit door that was located nearby. Through the gap in the blinds, Maya could see several people sitting around a conference table covered with documents and what appeared to be stacks of cash. She recognized one of the men as someone she had seen entering the building during previous surveillance operations. The woman she had observed on the security cameras was also present, along with two other men she had not seen before. "Phoenix, we need you to get closer if possible," Agent Rodriguez said through the earpiece. "Can you hear what they're discussing?" Maya moved closer to the office door, pretending to examine the door frame for security vulnerabilities. She could now hear fragments of conversation that confirmed the FBI's suspicions about money laundering. "The Chicago operation generated $2.3 million last quarter," one voice was saying. Denver was slightly lower at $1.8 million. Another voice responded, "The courier system is working well, but we need to be more careful about documentation. Too much paperwork creates unnecessary risks." Maya realized she was listening to a detailed discussion of criminal financial operations across multiple cities. This was exactly the kind of evidence the FBI needed to build their case. Morrison appeared at her shoulder. "Are you finished with your inspection?" "Almost," Maya said. "I just need to check the fire alarm system." As Maya pretended to examine a fire alarm panel on the wall, she heard a voice from the meeting room that made her blood run cold. "The Rodriguez situation was handled poorly," the voice was saying. "Using the device was supposed to discredit her completely, but the plan backfired and brought federal attention to our operations." Maya felt dizzy as the implications hit her. These people were discussing the bomb plot that had nearly destroyed her life. They were talking about her as if she were a problem to be solved rather than a human being whose life they had tried to destroy. Another voice responded. "Morrison assured us that she would be eliminated from the equation. Instead, she's back in the building conducting some kind of investigation." Maya realized with horror that Frank Morrison was not just involved in the criminal operation. He had been specifically responsible for orchestrating the bomb plot. The man standing next to her had tried to turn her into a mass murderer, and now he was watching her gather evidence against him. Morrison was looking at her strangely, as if sensing that something had changed. Maya tried to maintain her composure while her mind raced with the realization that she was in immediate danger. "I think that completes my inspection," Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Good," Morrison said. "Let's get you back downstairs." As they walked toward the elevator, Maya could hear Agent Rodriguez's voice through her earpiece, but Morrison's proximity made it impossible for her to respond. She knew the surveillance team could hear everything that was happening, but she also knew that it would take time for them to respond if Morrison became violent. The elevator ride down felt like an eternity. Maya was acutely aware that she was trapped in a small space with someone who had tried to kill her and might try to do so again. Morrison stood behind her, and she could not see his face or predict his actions. When the elevator doors opened on the ground floor, Maya stepped out quickly and began walking toward the building's main exit. She needed to get outside where the FBI surveillance team could protect her. "Maya," Morrison called after her. "Wait a moment." Maya turned around, hoping that her expression did not reveal her fear. Morrison was walking toward her with a strange smile on his face. "I just realized something," Morrison said. "You never told me who requested this security assessment. Who exactly are you working for?" Maya felt trapped. Any answer she gave would either blow her cover or further endanger her safety. Through her earpiece, she could hear Agent Rodriguez coordinating an emergency response. "All units, move in now. Phoenix is in immediate danger." Maya decided that her only option was to run. She turned toward the exit and began moving as quickly as possible without actually running, hoping to reach the street before Morrison could stop her. Behind her, she heard Morrison shouting into his phone. "The Rodriguez woman is FBI? I repeat, she's working with the feds." Maya broke into a run as the building's main doors came into view. She could see FBI agents in tactical gear approaching from multiple directions, but Morrison was close behind her and might reach her before help arrived. Just as Maya reached the building's lobby, she heard the calm, authoritative voice that had saved her life 6 weeks earlier. "Stand down." Officer Patterson stepped through the main doors with his weapon drawn, but lowered. Behind him, Agent Rodriguez and Agent Thompson entered with a full tactical team. "Frank Morrison, you're under arrest," Agent Rodriguez announced. "You have the right to remain silent." Maya collapsed into a chair in the lobby as FBI agents swarmed the building. Through the windows, she could see additional law enforcement vehicles arriving, along with media crews who had somehow learned about the operation. Officer Patterson approached Maya with obvious concern. "Are you all right?" Maya looked up at the man who had intervened in her life twice now, both times with the same calm authority that had probably saved countless lives over the course of his career. "I think so," she said. "Is it over?" "The arrests are just beginning," Agent Rodriguez said, joining them in the lobby. "But your part is finished. You've helped us gather enough evidence to prosecute the entire network." As Maya sat in the lobby of the building where she had once worked, watching her former supervisor being led away in handcuffs, she reflected on the strange journey that had brought her to this moment. A simple complaint about workplace safety had led to the exposure of a major criminal enterprise, and her wrongful termination had ultimately resulted in justice not just for herself, but for countless potential victims of the money laundering operation. 6 months later, Maya stood outside a different courthouse for a very different kind of hearing. The criminal trials had concluded with convictions for Morrison and 12 other defendants. The money laundering operation had been completely dismantled, and Maya's wrongful termination lawsuit had been settled for a significant amount that would allow her to start a new life. Officer Patterson, who had become a friend during the long investigation and trial process, stood beside her as they watched the sunset over the city where her nightmare had begun and ended. "Any regrets about getting involved in all this?" Patterson asked. Maya considered the question carefully. The past year had been the most difficult of her life, filled with fear, uncertainty, and moments of genuine terror. But it had also been a year of discovering her own strength and resilience, and of making a difference in the world in ways she had never imagined possible. "No regrets," she said finally. "Someone tried to turn me into a weapon, but instead, I became a force for justice." Carmen and Miguel joined them outside the courthouse, both beaming with pride at their mother's courage and determination. The family that had been nearly destroyed by criminal conspiracy was now stronger than ever, bound together by their shared commitment to fighting for what was right. As they walked away from the courthouse together, Maya carried a new backpack, a gift from Agent Rodriguez to replace the one that had been destroyed in the bomb squad investigation. This bag contained not legal documents or evidence, but simple things that represented her new life. An employment contract with a security consulting firm that wanted to hire her based on her experience with the FBI, brochures from colleges where she was considering taking classes, and photos of her children who had become her partners in seeking justice. The woman who had once been an unwitting victim of terrorism had become an active agent of positive change. Her backpack would never again carry anything that could harm innocent people. Instead, it carried hope, determination, and the tools she would need to continue making the world a safer place.